Yep, Tom Helke, we're out in Scandia area. We're binding oats for our thrashing party coming up. And actually this oats will go to the Almalun. So the grain binder is our family's Minnesota made grain binder, which has been in my parents' shed for 45 years plus. So it's the first active day. And we had a few complications in the beginning with the knotter, which was only the problem we had, and we got that cleaned up, and my neighbor, which was a master at all these old pieces of equipment, helped get it going. I think in an hour or so we were successful. We haven't missed a bundle since we started. One thing with this machine coming from Minnesota and then getting to be back here and work again is, exciting for me to have this piece of equipment out and going. So with some help and some my grandkids up here, I think I'm getting out of shock on the oats, which I'm happy about. Not that I shocked a lot, I was kind of small, but I did ride this binder probably back in 1970. Biggest part of the shock in the oats is you want to cut it. We're plenty late right now, but you want to cut it before the storms come in and knock it down once it gets headed out. So you can cut it right after it turns from the green to this golden color that we have right now. You cut it with the binders before the weeds start growing back up in your field, so it's clean, and then you shock it together, which means you take 6 of the bundles and put them into a shock stock. Like we'd take these couple here and would stand these up, and then add our next 4 or so to it, and then we'd put one over the top, kind of as a rain cap. See if I can get another one here to. So that way, if this would sit out in the field for probably 2 weeks to 3 weeks or what have us. One more here to. We usually use 2 hands to get this up to stand, but it'll give it a chance to dry out without anything else growing. Like we got a little green plant in here, which that needs to dry out before this bundles could be hauled in and ran through the thrash machine, which is our next stage here coming in a week. This is called a grain binder, and it's a PTO driven one, which they've came out with. The ones before were ground driven, and they were pulled actually with horses. So this one here has the PTO hooked to the tractor, so no longer can this one be used for the horse drawn one. Because it was kept in the shed. If anything that's left out in the weather, because there's a lot of wood parts in this, the canvases in here are, when I unrolled them 2 weeks ago and I hauled this machine home, I was really glad to see that they're all in good shape. The leather straps were a little rough, so I went and put some ink oil on them so we could be able to tighten them up enough to, make sure then that they didn't split or rip any canvas parts of it. Otherwise I would have been looking for more parts. Mine is family, so to start with, my mother's glad to get this stuff out of the shed and being able to be used, and she doesn't have to worry that it's going to be sold at some auction or scrapped in some scrapyard. And then I'm glad to get my kids and grandkids involved, and mainly my grandkids. My kids are 30s and 40s, so I was working too much other stuff to get them involved in this kind of stuff, and I finally realized I got to take time and pass this heritage on before it's gone. I am working on it. This is actually, so it's our first year of running this binder, but this will be our 3rd year of doing the thrashing party. In the first 2 years, one of my neighbors had a ground-driven grain binder that he came and we cut some oats 2 different times with his. And it's a lot of stuff to get ready, plus try to work and keep up. But this year I just thought I got to get this machine out of the shed, and it came from southeastern corner of Minnesota, so it's 3-hour drive down and a couple hours to get it, because it's back in the shed buried behind all kinds of other things. And glad to see it was in really good shape. And when we turned it over the first time, with the tractor to run it out with this, I was amazed everything worked good. It was quiet, so I was really, really pleased. This would do all small grains. You could do wheat, rye, probably barley, anything in a small oats grain stock. And then it would depend on how you set your thrash machine to how to separate that straw from that grain. Oh, this machine will run all day. Yep. You can't cut the oats if it's wet. So if a rain came in, you don't do it when it's wet, or if a heavy dew. So it's usually a late morning start, but you can run it all the way into heavy dew, or as long as especially now in the sunshine, it's perfect. There's a couple of tighteners on these canvases, so we're gonna, as soon as we're done with our back swath, we'll loosen them up. Usually you'll pull the canvases off, but this machine will have to be covered, so it'll go back to the shed tonight. I have another field we're going to cut, hopefully in a day or 2. Early 40s this came out. John Deere's got them. McCormick Deering has them, and is what my neighbor told me today, that McCormick Deering is the one that came up with the knotter that ties these bundles. So there's a little needle comes up through and ties a bundle and makes a knot, and it releases and cuts the twine. It does it all in a second. So between the John Deere and McCormick, and in Minnesota, I know there's probably one more out there, so that had their own grain binders. Back in the time, you get a machine that people are using, and start from the west in Dakotas and what have you. I'm sure everybody go, we got to make one of these. The guy sitting on the seat, that would have been me. So yeah, you try to, if the shocks are going to come in 6 bundles in your shock, you want to catch 5, and then at the 6th one, which kind of depends on how the oats is flowing too, but you trip it at there. And so I'm watching that. I'm watching the tilt of the machine, making sure it's level. When some of the oats is down, I'm tipping it a hair more forward to catch some, and then just make sure stuff isn't plugged up or a belt slipping or what's going on. And then every time you come around the field, you'll trip in the same row, so then when you go to pick up your shocks in bundles, you're not driving all over the field. You got stuff gathered up into kind of uniform rows. I worked on it. I didn't get it. It's hard to get it perfect, but it actually came out pretty good for this little field up here. The farming industry is a whole different thing. This turns into carrying on the heritage of what was going on, and all the farmers know this already, the ones that are farmers. It'd be better to teach the general public and other people what really did go on and what this is, because we were having one of our little thrash, and actually our first party, and one of my neighbors asked us, you saw the oats going into the grain bin and the straw going out the end of the machine, and she goes, so what do you do with the oats? And I looked at her and I go, have you ever had oatmeal? She goes, no, this is where it comes from. This is where it comes from. Oatmeal, Cheerios, any oat grain product. So, it's good that everybody's kind of aware of, it gets down to where your food came from. A lot of people think it's all from the store.